Okay, so I just want to give you a short little video to walk you through how to use Google Forms, because it's changed a fair bit recently, particularly where they've put the settings. We'll start over here on the left, so that'll take you back to the home for forms, where you can select to make a new form. This is your title of the form. Once you put the title down here, it will actually automatically fill in that for you. Next to here, you can move it. So if you click here, it'll open up your drive. You can put it in the folder that you actually want this form in, or you can add new folders and all that kind of stuff as well. There's a star button here as well if you'd like to star this form so you can find it more easily. It means it'll appear in your Google Drive section under your starred folders and your starred documents and stuff. It'll all appear in there. Now, to use a form, give it a title. So let's call this test 1. And you'll see now that that's there. If I click up here, it gets called test 1. You can give it a description. I normally use this to give people some instructions about the form, maybe the purpose of the form. If it's a quiz, tell them what the quiz is about and how much it's worth, all that kind of stuff. It then tells you that this form is automatically collecting emails, so I can change that in settings, which I'll show you soon. Then down here you have your questions. So automatically there'll be one question here. If you write your question, Google will automatically change what type of question it is based on what they think it should be according to your question here, but you can always change it afterwards anyway. So this could be a short answer, a paragraph, multiple choice, check boxes you use if there's more than one answer. You can use a drop down menu if you like. You can have students upload files, which is really good if you want to use Google Forms for students to submit work to you, which I often use this for things that I'm not going to grade, for example. I could get them to submit it here rather than in Google Classroom. You can do linear scales where they're rating things out of 5. A multiple choice grid actually means that you'll have multiple rows and columns, and the kids are selecting one of the options if you want students to be able to match two things up, for example. You can also do that as a checkbox if there's more than one that you'd like them to tick off. You can make it so they have to include a date or it has to have a time, and that's really quite simple to use. And even if you select short answer, for example, you can actually make it so that it's conditional. So if I click here and have response validation, I can make it so they have to insert a number and it has to be greater than something, or I can click here, it has to be less than, equal to, or between. So very fun to use if you need to. If you use this, I can make it a length, so it has to be a minimum or maximum number of characters. So if you're wanting them to write a long response, you can make it so they actually can't submit it unless they've written a long response. And then you can make sure it's a regular expression, that it has to be text, etc. as well. So there's a few things there. If I select that one, you can do the same thing here in paragraphs as well. So length and regular expression, so it's not quite the same, because if it's number, etc., it should be a short answer. Now, the other thing you'll notice in here is a description, so I can give my question a little description. So I often use this if I want students to select more than one. So if I'm using a checkbox such as this one and they can select more than one answer, I'll put in here, select all that apply. And that way the students know that there's more than one answer. If you want, you can be more specific than that and tell them, select 2 if you want to, or just give them other pieces of information. Now, the other thing you can do to your questions is you can insert images. So you can do a Google search. So if I want some frogs, for example, I can insert a lovely picture of a frog into the question. And so then I can make the question related to the image that's in here. The other thing I can do, so you can align it all differently. I'm going to remove it. The other thing you can do is you can add a video as well. So if I go to YouTube and search for a video, so energy systems, for example, and then I'm going to select this one and insert that video into it. And again, I can align to the middle, and then you give it a bit of a title. Now that's inserted kind of as a section, and then you're going to add a question below that. So if I click here, it'll add the question just below the video. But back in here, yeah, so there's your images. You can add titles and descriptions as well into your question sections. And so these all go in as sections when you're selecting titles and stuff, but in the actual questions in here, these are all videos, okay? Sorry, photos, not videos. So you can add those, you can add videos and put your questions underneath. You then, what you want to do is kind of add a section maybe. And then when you add a section, it'll mean that it's kind of like another page in the form. So you'll see all of this on the front page, and then the next section, you can give that a title if you want to. So you can just go section 2 even, make it nice and simple, and then add some questions there as well. Now with these questions, if you click this, you can actually import the questions from another form. So if I go to any other form that exists here, let's go with this one, HSC programming. It's going to have random questions, but it'll pull up the questions from that form, and I can just select it and insert it. So if I select this one and import it, now it's got, you know, put your nested number in here, and you can see I've made that conditional that it is a number that gets inserted, and I've made it required down at the bottom here as well. So that's section 2. If I add another section, I can then show you section 3. I can then do things like go to section 3 and I can skip section 2, or I can put in here 2 options, and then you can actually make it so that people see go to section based on the answer. And so if I do that, I can then say, well, if this is wrong, they're actually going to go to section 3, and that's going to be a bit of revision for that question. But if they get it right, they can continue straight to the next section, or I can make it go to section 2, just in case I change and put another section in here or something like that. But it just allows that kind of revision. I can even make them go back to, you know, the section 1. So if they get it wrong and they click submit, they actually stay here. And so then they have to try another answer before they move on. So you can actually make it so that students can't finish a quiz, for example, unless they get everything right. And so it forces them to quickly revise things. Also good if you want to do like a build your own adventure type thing and have the students, you know, they can watch a bit of a video, and then it might say, does she open the door or does she jump out the window? And so you can have them go to different sections in the form based on that, and have in here, rather than images, you can have, you know, quite long descriptions of things which are actually the story that the students are going through and that kind of stuff. So that's some basics of the questions. Responses here, once people put in their responses, you can see them individually or you can see them all collaboratively as a group. It'll give you graphs and stuff for some of those answers. If you click this, it'll create a spreadsheet, so you can do that as a new spreadsheet, or if you want all of your responses to go into a spreadsheet that already exists, or just constantly going into another spreadsheet, you select this and then you get to select the spreadsheet you want. So if you, for example, have a class spreadsheet that's just, you know, if you're collecting their work here, I would just put this, select existing spreadsheet, and then select your class spreadsheet that already exists. And then anytime a student answers this quiz, for example, it might not be a quiz that's marked in terms of being weighted for assessments, but they could complete the quiz. It will fill in a spreadsheet for you and show you, you know, that they got the right or wrong and all that kind of stuff. And it'll just automatically populate that for you. Or if they're submitting pieces of classwork and stuff to you, if you've got upload a file, for example, as one of your questions, then it'll keep it all, you know, you can just, it'll just have new tabs for each form, and each tab will be labeled according to the form. The other thing that is here is you can click here, you can get email notifications when things get submitted, which is nice, or you can select a response destination, which is already what I showed you by clicking here. You can turn off responses, and so now when someone goes to this form, it'll just say, sorry, this form is no longer accepting responses, or you can leave that on. In the settings, this is where you make it a quiz, and so you can immediately grade after each one if it's multiple choice. If it's going to have some text in it, you're going to do this later after manual review. Otherwise, all those ones will be marked basically as no marks allocated. Now, here you can see a bunch of settings for the quiz as well. So if they miss a question, then they can see which questions were answered incorrectly. Correct answers, respondents can see correct answers, or point values. Do you want to see how many points? This is the default value for each question. But now that this is turned on, if I then go back here to the questions, so now when you come back to your questions, you'll have this little answer key that you can add to down the bottom. So if I go to multiple choice questions, click answer key, option 1 is correct. You can change the points here, and I can add answer feedback. So if they get it correct, I can say well done. Or if they get it incorrect, I can say please consider the base numeral, or whatever you want to use. You can put links to things, you can embed a little video if you want of some feedback for them, and just click save, and that goes in here as well. And so even for written responses, I can do this. I can add answer feedback here and say what the actual answer is, and then they'll know if they got it right or not, even though the points may not be allocated yet because I have to mark it later. But it's really good to be able to have the answer key as well, so that you can just easily say this is the correct one, and that one's also, click the option 2 is correct, change how many points it's worth, and add some feedback that they get straight away, which is fantastic. If you then go up here to settings, and we're going to continue through here, you can change your basic default points, etc. You can manage the responses. So at the moment, collecting email addresses is on by default. I could turn that off. Do I want responders to get a copy of their answers? So I can say always, and so whenever it collects their email address, now this has to be on for this to work, but for that to be clicked on, then I can make it so that they just get an email with all their answers, which can be very helpful at times. You can allow them to edit their responses after they've finished it. If this goes on automatically for you, it probably doesn't matter if you're using a quiz for your own students. But if I was going to use this for teachers at another school or anything like that, I would have to turn that off so that everyone else can actually access the quiz. I can limit it to one response, or I can not limit it to one response. This is the presentation, so do I want to see a progress bar, which is good if you have multiple sections, so you can actually see where they're up to. If there's only one section, you don't need to show that. If it's a quiz and you want to move the questions around, you can shuffle the order of it so that the kids, they're not going to have the same questions first. This is the confirmation message. I can change that and say, well done, congrats on getting this done, and just save that, and that's the message now that will come up when they submit the form. Do I want them to show a link to submit another one? I can say no. This I generally leave off for students unless you want the students to see everyone's results summarized, and that's all the graphs and tables and stuff that will come in. So you will always be able to see this. This is for the students to be able to see this, or whoever's filling in the form. And then here you can disable auto save or not. So forms now automatically saves everything as the students are filling it in, and so that's really cool. So if you don't want that to happen, for example, if they're doing a quiz that has to be done in a set amount of time, you can turn that off. And then down here are your defaults, so your form defaults. So currently I'm collecting email addresses by default, and then questions, so they're all required by default as well, but I can turn those on or off. And then that brings us to the right hand side. These are your add-ons for forms, so you can click here and get a whole bunch of forms. That form limiter means that once 6 people fill in this question, then that question disappears, for example. And so you can do that kind of stuff, which is really handy for sport and stuff at school. When people are selecting stuff, or when students are selecting subjects and stuff or whatever, you can have it so that it actually will cut out and say, oh, this is full, there's 20 in here, and people won't even see it anymore. There's form publishers. You can get emails sent to different people who are not part of this. So up here where we've gone to responses, and I've asked it to get email responses. So that will send it to me because I own the form. But if I want to send the form responses to someone else, then I can use that kind of an add-on in here. Certify them will automatically send a certificate to someone who fills in the form. I can change how it looks. Okay, colors, you can choose an image and then it'll basically organize everything according to that. You can have a look at what the form's going to look like at the end, undo, redo, and then here you can make a copy of your form. So if you want multiple copies of something, you can do that. Delete it, get a pre-filled link. So if you want some sections filled in already, you can get that. You can print your form if someone doesn't have access to the internet. You can add other teachers to have access to the form and all of its results. There is a script editor, and then you can get your add-ons here as well. And so if you click on your add-ons, you can then have a quick look through here and find all kinds of stuff. So, choice eliminator is going to remove choices as they go. That's certify them. You can get form builders. You can get form timer so that it's actually timing how long students can work on the quiz. Limit reach. So there's all kinds of stuff here that are really good. You can get things that generate word clouds from the form. You can go from a form to actually putting events in calendars, all kinds of stuff. So have a look through that, search for something that you want a form to do if you think it doesn't do that, and see if it does. And that is your quick tour of Google Forms.